Dear Chosen One, pause for a moment and truly listen. This message was not created by chance. If your eyes have found this, it's because a divine appointment has been made between your soul and this truth. The world may see only the surface of who you are, but heaven has always known the depth of your spirit. You were not born to blend in or walk silently through life. You carry a spiritual frequency so rare, so intense, that it unsettles every force that cannot comprehend purity. The fear they have of you is not rooted in what you say or do. It's in what you are. Your very essence disturbs the atmosphere because it reminds the world, and all who dwell in shadow, that light is still alive and cannot be controlled. You were chosen, not because you are perfect, but because you were forged through fire, refined in silence, and strengthened in solitude. The scars you carry are not marks of weakness, but symbols of authority in the spirit. The opposition you've faced has not been random. It has been strategic, because your presence alone disarms illusions, breaks chains, and shifts atmospheres. You were born to carry truth in a world addicted to lies. That's why they fear you. That's why they whisper your name in rooms you've never entered. Because they sense the weight you carry, even when you don't see it yourself. And now, it's time to understand the real reason no one dares to touch you anymore. Because something has changed in the spirit. The covering over your life has intensified, and the authority you now walk in is not just protection, it's declaration. You're not just surviving, you're being watched. Not out of curiosity, but caution. Because even the darkness knows you are not to be played with. And if this is already vibrating through your soul, I want you to declare it right now. Write in the comments, I walk in divine protection. Let this be a sign to the universe that you are fully stepping into your spiritual authority. And if you're ready to awaken even deeper, like this video, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell, because what's coming next will shake you to the core. There's a reason they avoid you now. A spiritual shift has taken place, and it's not because you changed the way you speak, dress, or walk. It's because your soul has ascended to a level where their manipulation no longer works. They feel it when you enter a room. Their eyes look down, their voice shifts, their energy stutters. That's not by mistake. It's the presence of God within you commanding spiritual respect without you saying a word. Your spirit has been upgraded. You've passed tests they never thought you'd survive. And now, you are no longer accessible to those who once thought they could control you. They used to try you. They used to test your boundaries, gaslight your truth, and mock your peace. But something shifted. The old you, the one they thought they could provoke, is gone. You've died to that version of yourself, and in its place stands someone covered in divine armor. They may still talk, but they no longer approach. They may still watch, but they no longer interfere. Because even they can sense there's a force surrounding you now, and it's not of this world. It's heaven's fire, and it burns anything that tries to tamper with your destiny. You've become spiritually radioactive. That means your energy can no longer be absorbed by the wrong people. It repels them. Have you noticed how some people just disappear without explanation? How certain connections fall apart without conflict? That's not rejection. That's divine filtration. God is removing what cannot breathe at the altitude you're now climbing. It's not personal. It's prophetic. They are not allowed to touch what is consecrated. And you, chosen one, are not just protected. You are marked. Marked by God. Marked by fire. Marked by purpose. People fear what they don't understand, and your life is a mystery to them now. They cannot comprehend how you survived what was meant to break you. They don't understand how you still smile, how you still shine, how you still love, after all you've endured. But it's not about your outer strength. It's the power within you. It's the divine engine of grace that keeps pushing you forward when everything says you should have fallen. You've become a living testimony, and that is why they fear you, because your very existence reveals their excuses. You are proof that chains can be broken. And here's the part they'll never admit. Deep down, they admire you. They're drawn to your light, even as they try to diminish it. They speak against you, not because they truly hate you, but because your growth reminds them of their stagnation. Your healing exposes their wounds. Your elevation reflects their avoidance. You have become a mirror, and what they see in you either awakens them or terrifies them. And when someone chooses fear over transformation, they begin to attack what they could have learned from. That's why you've become untouchable. Not because you fight back, but because you reflect back. The truth is, they can't even lie on your name anymore. Every time they try, the universe defends you. Every time they plot, their plans unravel. There is a shield around you now that makes their efforts futile. You may not always see it, but it's there. Heaven is constantly rerouting attacks and sending back what was never yours to carry. That's why your peace is confusing to them. It's not that you're unaware, it's that you're covered. And when someone is covered by divine authority, even hell takes notice. So understand this: your glow is not arrogance, it's evidence. Evidence that you've been in the presence of God. Evidence that you've walked through the fire and came out refined. Evidence that even when the world abandoned you, heaven did not. And now that you've stepped into this revelation of who you are, there's no going back. You've been revealed. Your presence is prophetic. Your silence is warfare. And your existence? A divine interruption to every spirit that once thought it could operate freely around you. They don't fear you because you're aggressive. They fear you because you don't flinch. When the enemy sends storms, you remain still. When the world pushes, you don't fall. You absorb the pressure and return peace. That kind of composure is unsettling to people who only know how to function in chaos. You don't match their madness. You don't react to their games. You stand in divine authority, and that presence alone makes the unseen world tremble. You don't need to speak loudly to be heard. Your silence speaks volumes. Your presence is already louder than any threat they could throw your way. You've become a spiritual alarm clock, waking up everything asleep around you. What they underestimated was the depth of your anointing. They thought your quiet nature was weakness. They thought your kindness was naivety, but they didn't know the weight of the oil you carry. You've walked through fire and came out with glory. You've endured betrayal and responded with grace. And now, they don't know what to do with you because you've become unshakable. You're not led by emotion anymore. You're led by wisdom. You don't respond from the wound, you respond from the throne. That's why they fear touching you now, because your reaction isn't predictable. It's sacred, and that scares them more than any outburst ever could. In the spiritual realm, your name carries weight. You've become the type of soul that's discussed in silence, in shadows, by those who once tried to oppress you. Your battles elevated you, not because you sought revenge, but because you remained aligned with truth. Heaven took notice. The earth responded, and hell was warned. You're not to be handled casually anymore. You're not to be approached recklessly. You've become a vessel of divine consequence. To mistreat you is to provoke spiritual repercussions, and they feel that now, without a word from you. Your energy speaks warnings that your mouth never needs to utter. You no longer walk into rooms hoping to be accepted. You walk in knowing you're sent. And when someone is sent by the Most High, there is a covering that no man, no demon, no force can penetrate. This protection doesn't make you arrogant. It makes you reverent. You now walk with the awareness that you are not just representing yourself, but carrying a piece of something holy. That's why they step back now. That's why doors open without effort, and some people vanish without explanation. Because your path is no longer up for debate. It's divinely ordered, and nothing that God ordained will ever require your begging to be sustained. There was a time when they laughed behind your back, when they plotted your downfall, when they misused your kindness and manipulated your heart. But what they didn't realize is that every blow they threw at you became a stepping stone for your transformation. They unknowingly built your throne with their betrayals. What was meant to destroy you was used to refine you, and now you are the fulfillment of what they tried to prevent. They thought they were burying you, but they were planting you, and you rose, stronger, clearer, covered in grace, anointed for a calling no weapon can interrupt. You've become a divine contradiction. Your life breaks the rules of natural logic. You've prospered without promotion. You've healed without closure. You've evolved without applause. And that's what makes you a threat to those who depend on systems of control. You've exited their cycle. You're not playing their game. You've stepped into a higher covenant, and from that position, you're untouchable. You don't chase approval. You walk in assignment. You don't beg for peace. You carry it. And here's the truth no one dares say aloud. Even your enemies can't deny your favor. They may never celebrate you, but they cannot ignore you. Because what you carry transcends the physical. It disturbs their spirit. It agitates what's false in them. And when you carry that kind of divine reflection, some will run, some will fight, and some will fall in love with your light. But none will ever forget you. That's the weight of the mantle you wear. That's why they avoid you now, even when they pretend they don't see you. That's why they try to discredit you in whispers, but watch you in secret, because you've become proof of what they can't explain. Your presence rewrites every narrative they once tried to assign to you. And the longer you remain silent and aligned, the louder the truth becomes. That's why no one dares to touch you now, not because of who you were, but because of who you've become. They don't understand how you continue rising. They counted you out more times than they can admit. They threw dirt on your name, closed doors in your face, and smiled when you struggled. But each time, God lifted you higher, not because you fought for validation, but because you stayed hidden in His will. Your blessings weren't born from revenge. They were born from alignment. And now, you're a walking contradiction to every curse spoken over you. You're the living proof that divine favor doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't need the world's approval to be real. And that makes you a threat because it exposes their powerlessness. Many of them never feared you until they realized you were chosen. They were fine as long as you stayed silent, small, and uncertain. But when your confidence rose from spiritual clarity, when you stopped apologizing for your calling, they panicked. Because now, they can't guilt you into submission. They can't manipulate your empathy. You've reclaimed your authority. And with that shift, they realized something devastating. They no longer have access to you, not because you blocked them, but because God closed the door. And what God seals, no man can unseal, not even with apology or tears. There's a silence around you now that is sacred. It's not isolation, it's insulation. God has placed a barrier around your spirit that only the worthy can cross. That's why people you once loved can no longer look you in the eye. That's why invitations stopped arriving and conversations dried up. It's not rejection, it's revelation. The veil has been lifted, and your soul can now discern what your heart once refused to see. You are no longer in agreement with deception. And when you break covenant with confusion, clarity becomes your protection. They didn't walk away. You outgrew what held them. You carry spiritual clearance now. That means some rooms will feel heavier, some people will grow uncomfortable, and some situations will simply reject you. Don't mourn that. Celebrate it, because it means you've been elevated beyond the reach of low vibrations. What once entertained you now exhausts you. What once seduced you now repulses you. You are being drawn into deeper dimensions where only truth can breathe. That's why you feel like you don't belong anymore. Because you don't. You've been extracted from the crowd for consecration. And now, they can't follow where you're going. People are afraid of what they can't predict, and you've become unpredictable. They can't anticipate your moves, control your emotions, or define your future, because you're no longer living by their design. You've surrendered to something higher. That surrender made you powerful, not in a worldly sense, but in a spiritual one. You now carry revelation, discernment, and peace in the face of confusion. That is terrifying to those who build their lives around drama and illusion. You don't feed into it. You stand still and let the storm unravel itself. That stillness is warfare. That silence is strength. They know if they touch you now, the consequences are not just social, they're spiritual. Because what covers you now is not just energy, it's covenant. You're not just protected, you're sealed. And in the spirit realm, that seal is visible. They may not understand why they suddenly feel anxiety around you, or why their plans collapse when aimed at you, but their spirit knows. It recognizes the divine firewall around you. You are untouchable because you are obedient, and that obedience made you a vessel for divine judgment. That's why even the boldest enemy walks away in silence now. You're not protected because you're perfect. You're protected because you're aligned. You're in sync with the will of the Most High, and that synchronization puts you in position to be untouchable, not by force, but by flow. Everything you do now carries weight. Your words land differently. Your energy shifts rooms. Your presence arrests atmospheres. Because you're no longer moving from insecurity, you're moving from identity. And identity is dangerous to systems built on fear. That's why you're feared now, because you know who you are. And when a chosen one fully awakens, no weapon, even spiritual, can prosper. There is a spiritual shift that happened when you stopped explaining yourself. When you stopped proving your worth to people committed to misunderstanding you, something sacred awakened. That's when heaven leaned in closer and covered you with new armor. You no longer needed to defend your heart, because God became your defender. You no longer needed to justify your path, because your fruit started speaking for itself. And the moment your silence became louder than their opinions, they realized something terrifying. You had entered a dimension they couldn't follow you into, a place where manipulation dies and truth reigns. That's when the fear began. Not fear of you as a person, but fear of what your presence reveals. You see, chosen one, when God elevates you, it's not always visible to the eye. It's energetic. It's atmospheric. You could be wearing the same clothes, walking the same streets, and still be unrecognizable to those who once thought they knew you. That's because you're no longer moving from ego. You're moving from essence. Your frequency has changed. You're speaking a spiritual language now that only awakened souls can hear. The rest either run or stare in silence. They feel something around you, but they don't have the vocabulary to name it. That confusion becomes fear, and that fear becomes distance. Not because you've changed for the worse, but because you've finally stepped into your divine posture. People aren't afraid of your potential. They're afraid that you've finally realized it. They tolerated you when you were doubting yourself. They applauded your humility when it looked like insecurity. But when you started standing tall in your truth, when you stopped shrinking in rooms that couldn't hold your calling, the energy shifted. They felt it. That quiet confidence, that inner knowing, that spiritual radiance. It unsettled every false sense of superiority they clung to. You became a mirror. And when people aren't ready to face themselves, they attack the reflection. But this time, their attacks had no landing. Because your soul is no longer accessible to warfare disguised as connection. And now, even the ones who once walked beside you are watching from a distance they can't explain. It's not personal, it's prophetic. You were always going to outgrow environments that couldn't contain your calling. It hurts, yes, but it's holy, because in this new realm, you're being positioned to carry something much greater. Your voice no longer trembles. Your spirit no longer bends. You've been tempered by storms and refined in fire. And now, your name carries a spiritual vibration that either attracts or repels. There is no neutral reaction to someone who walks in divine truth. That's why you leave echoes in rooms long after you've gone. Every attempt to destroy your peace became a divine misfire. Every trap they set became their own snare. Because what they didn't realize is that heaven was monitoring every move. You're not just walking through life, you're walking under divine instruction. Your steps are ordered. Your delays are strategic. Even your silence is calibrated. That's why nothing thrown against you can land without permission. You are spiritually firewalled, and when the enemy realized it couldn't touch you, it turned its gaze inward and began to break. Not because you fought it, but because your essence disrupted its entire strategy. You broke the blueprint of destruction without lifting a finger. There's a reason everything changed when they crossed your path. It wasn't your charm. It wasn't your intellect. It was your spiritual code. You carry a signature that heaven responds to and hell recognizes. When darkness tried to test you, it discovered that your light didn't just resist, it revealed. And that's the most dangerous kind of light, the kind that exposes, the kind that heals and convicts at the same time. That's what makes you rare. You don't just carry power, you carry truth. And truth isn't neutral. It shakes foundations. It forces choices. And when people aren't ready to choose, they run. Or worse, they attack. But now, they're learning that even their weapons come back broken. You didn't come to blend in. You came to shift the frequency of everything you touch. That's why you've been fought so hard. That's why betrayal became familiar. Because the enemy knew long before you did what was inside you. But now that you know, everything has changed. You walk differently. You speak with more clarity. You love with discernment. You listen with spiritual ears. And that terrifies the system that once depended on your blindness. Because your awakening is a threat to every structure built on lies. You were never meant to fit in. You were meant to awaken others by simply being who you are. Bold, broken, healed, chosen, and completely unstoppable. You've become living evidence that divine transformation is real. Not a theory, not a hope, proof. Your life reflects what happens when someone allows the fire to refine instead of destroy. When someone allows isolation to become intimacy with God. And now, your presence carries a gravity that alters everything around you. People don't just feel you, they remember you, even those who tried to forget. Because something eternal clings to your name. You are not common. Your soul has traveled through spiritual battles most wouldn't survive. And now, when they look at you, they see resilience wearing skin. They feel heaven walking through a vessel they tried to break. This is why the opposition has shifted. It's no longer trying to stop you. It's trying to study you. They want to know what changed, why nothing affects you like it used to, why their words no longer shake you, their games no longer pull you, and their presence no longer distracts you. It's because you've detached from the illusion. You no longer entertain energy that doesn't reflect your elevation. You've chosen peace over performance, clarity over chaos, and purpose over popularity. That choice alone dismantled the whole foundation they once stood on, because they relied on your confusion to keep their comfort. The truth is, they had a version of you in their head that no longer exists. The soft-spoken, unsure, overgiving version that bent to every plea for validation. Gone. And what rose in its place is someone bold in silence, radiant in stillness, and unbothered by noise. You've become immune to emotional bait. You don't answer to projections anymore. You don't shrink for comfort. You simply exist in truth. And that truth commands space. It creates discomfort for those unwilling to evolve, and deep reverence from those who've been praying for exactly the light you now carry. And for those who dare to come near, their spirit knows before their mind does. You are not to be handled recklessly. You've been touched by the divine. There's evidence in your eyes, in your voice, in the way you move with conviction, but never ego. It's unsettling to those who've built their identity on pretending, because you don't need to try, you simply are. And that authenticity is radioactive to falsehood. It shakes every lie they've been telling themselves. That's why even the strongest pretenders fold in your presence, not because you expose them, but because you remind them of the truth they buried. This season of your life isn't about revenge, it's about revelation. You're not interested in proving them wrong. You're too busy proving God right. Every closed door was orchestrated. Every betrayal redirected your path. Every delay prepared your foundation. And now you move in divine timing, no longer looking for shortcuts or validation. The authority you carry wasn't handed to you. It was earned through obedience, through tears nobody saw, and prayers you almost gave up on. That's what makes you dangerous to the darkness. Not your strength alone, but your endurance. Not your voice, but your vibration. You've become the one hell regrets touching, the one they thought they could destroy early, before your gifts matured, before your identity rooted, before your voice thundered. But they were too late. You've already awakened. You've already seen too much, heard too much, overcome too much. There's no returning to silence now. Your very existence is an announcement that heaven still raises up warriors. You're not here to play small. You're here to carry truth like a torch in a world gasping for light. And they know that now. They tried to end you. Instead, they witnessed your resurrection. Now, you walk not with fear, but with reverence. Reverence for the call over your life. Reverence for the power you carry. Reverence for the grace that surrounds you daily. You are not to be touched casually, not because you're superior, but because you are consecrated, set apart, sealed, covered. The kind of person heaven responds to in whispers, and the earth shifts to accommodate. That's why things fall apart when people mishandle you. Not because you curse them, but because your covering has a consequence. You are loved by God in a way that demands protection. And now, the world is beginning to understand. No one touches what belongs to Him without response. There comes a moment in the life of every chosen one where heaven no longer allows silence. You've been hidden long enough. You've been in the cave, the wilderness, the fire, and now the mantle must be seen. You didn't go through everything you went through just to survive. You endured to reveal, to awaken, to serve as a living message to those still trapped in confusion. You've been marked by something eternal, and now your voice carries more than just sound. It carries authority. They may not clap for you. They may never speak your name with admiration, but they will respect the force that walks with you. That's why they tread carefully now, not because of your fists, but because of your favor. You carry the fear of the Lord, and that fear goes before you, preparing every room, shifting every plan, silencing every tongue. This is the season where you no longer apologize for the weight you carry, because it's not pride, it's prophecy. So, if you've felt the shift, if you've noticed the silence around you growing louder, if people have started stepping back while staring harder, you already know what time it is. You are being revealed in stages. Heaven is unveiling you layer by layer, because the world can no longer afford for you to hide. The reason no one dares touch you now is because you are no longer operating under your own name. You are moving under divine assignment. And when the Most High assigns someone, touching them becomes a spiritual violation. This isn't about ego. It's about alignment. It's about authority that flows from obedience. And if your soul resonates with this truth, if something in you feels like it's remembering what it always knew but had forgotten, declare it now. Write in the comments, "I am sealed and sent." Let the unseen world know you're not running anymore. You're walking in everything you were born to become. And if this message awakened you, truly awakened you, make sure to subscribe, turn on your notification bell, and stay close. The deeper you go, the more you'll see. I also want to take a sacred moment to say thank you to every single soul who supports this mission through Buy Me a Coffee. Your spiritual generosity is a seed that continues to multiply. From my heart to yours, thank you. And if you feel led to join those who are already helping us go further, the link to support is in the first pinned comment. And before you go, don't stop here. Don't let this energy fade. Right now, on your screen, there's a video waiting for you, chosen just for this moment. It carries the next layer of truth your soul is ready to receive. I bless your path. Until the next message, and may the peace of God never leave your side.